Hi, welcome back to my channel. And today we got something very important to discuss here. Remember, we are preparing ourselves to discuss about the visual pathway and the praise. If you haven't, watched the previous two videos, 2 or 3 videos that discussing all these vision stuffs, make sure you have watched them before you come to watch this video because it's kind of continuation. So today we are talking about the visual field as we were preparing ourselves to go to discuss the visual pathways. And without wasting time, and as always, I got some questions for you. Number one, is there any difference between see and look? Yeah? So the difference between see and look, see is something passive. It's actually what we call the perception of vision. Is a perception of vision. You don't fight to see. It's just like it hits your retina and boom, you see. But look is right, it's an active process of directing your eyes from one object or one point to another, to a point of interest, so that you can see, that's what we call that's looking. But seeing is just something passive, is perception of right. And I think that brings a question on what sees between the eyes and the brain. Let me in the comment. And but the idea is your eyes are just like camera, so what sees is your brain, but your eyes just like a camera, so that it's like the door or something that receives the light, but what sees actually is the brain. So another question: can you see, how can you see something without directly looking at it? I think this is kind of like connected to the previous questions and the questions in the previous videos. And I think it just points into the knowledge of the concept of arrangement of rods and cones over the retina. So the distribution of the cones and rods in the retina is what makes it even possible for you to answer this question. And and I think now you can go back to think of why you move your eyes. Of course, moving your eyes from point to point is what we call it looking, because you want to focus on an object of interest. And so you can connect this concept. So can you see that looking? If yes, how? If no, why? Can you see without looking? Also, it's another point. It's another very, very important question in this discussion on the visual field. But the idea is, yes, you can look. You can see without looking, because not always want to use So basically, what this question means, I am looking straight forward. Can I see this point when I'm looking straight forward? The answer is yes, I can see this point when I'm looking forward. But the difference is the quality, quality of what I'm seeing is what is poor, but I can still see it. So if something comes from sideways, can I see? So the answer is yes, I can see without looking. I can see without looking, but only the quality and the quality of what I'm seeing is poor. It's not the same as how I would look at that particular object and see the information from the space. And last question is, were you checking for visual fields? Why is it important to check each eye independently? Answer this question by the end of the video. You answer this question by the end of the video. So let's take a look at this duck over here. It's so beautiful, isn't it? Look at the color of the duck. So about this duck, when you pay attention to the eyes, you know that eyes are placed on the lateral side of the head. So lateral side of the head is how the eyes are placed. So this gives a clue on how they get the vision, how they see the world, because this is how they see the world. So the left eye, for example, of this duck sees from this point all the way to this point, and then The right eye sees from this point all the way to this point. So they've got this wide field of vision. So wide field of vision can view, can see a very wide space, a very wide space, eh? So you see, like it's like almost so it can see from this point to this point and this point to this point. So all in the end, it's like they can like view all this region. So this approximately 360, almost 360 degrees. So they can see in horizontal fade, they can see almost 360 degrees. So maybe 350 word give or take, but roughly this is how they can see. So they have this kind of we call it panoramic vision. The panorama is when you go through your phone, you will find in the camera this mode we call it panorama. So the panorama is called because it has got a very very it can take a very 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 like wide video, picture. It can take a very wide picture at the same time. So here is how the dark sees the world, huh? It's how the dark see the world. So you see that you have like three important feeds. We have feed that this feed here is seen by both eyes, and we have another feed here. This feed from here to here, from here to here is seen by this left eye. This feed from here to here is exclusively seen by the right eye. The left eye cannot get into this region, and so surprised like the right eye cannot go into this region. So we have the first region is we call it the monocular region or the monocular zone because it's seen by only one eye, and this one is also in monocular zone. And we have this vision of field of fused. It's a fused region, which is we call it binocular zone or binocular field. And then we have the field which is out of vision. Also, let me move this camera over here. Yes. So this field here is field of out of vision. This is out of vision. And then we have another we have another another organism here, that owl. Yes, we used it in the previous video, and today we are also using it as an example. So the eyes of an owl, they are placed on the ventral radial direction. The ventral radial direction, not ventral radial direction. So ventral, but on the radial side. So this also gives its this like placement of eyes gives it like a unique or a vision of its own. So here is how it sees the world. So the left eye of the left eye of an owl, can see from this point from this region all the way to this lesion here. So all this lesion can be seen by left eye, and then on the right eye as well, it can see from this point all the way to this point, all the way to this point. So it has got a region here which is like fused region, or we call it the binocular region, the region that can be seen by both eyes. Every eye can see at this point, but this region here can only be seen by left eye. Like the right eye cannot get into this field because it's limited to this point. So this field is only exclusively seen by one eye, which is the left one, and then this field is only exclusively seen by right eye, which is like exclusive field. And then so this is monocular zone, this is monocular zone, this is binocular zone, can be seen by both eyes. And then we have the field posterior here at the back of the owl that cannot be seen. It's like out of vision, so we can call it out of vision field, right, which is out of vision of an owl. So after I've discussed all this, we have millions of animals in Kingdom Animalia, and they have like different unique placement of eyes, and so they give like this different field of vision. But mean, after looking these two examples, we good to go for the human being. So those are the regions that we're saying, the binocular and monocular, and now let's go to the human being. So in the human being, I mean, you see now the dark here, it has got a very narrow binocular zone. So binocular, this is binocular zone that can be seen by eyes. So basically, what it means like anything that falls under this point, anything that falls under this point can be seen by this dark, and anything that falls under this region can be seen. So in the end, it's like a dark can like focus on two different points at the same time, two different points. Assuming we have a dog that is approaching from this point, and then we also have got maybe a cat or something that comes from this point. So the duck has this capability of focusing at two different objects at the same time, which is never the same in human beings. So human beings are already like focusing on one point at a time, but this duck, they can focus like this eye is taking information from this side of the world, and this one is taking information from this side of the world, and they can all focus at different points at the same time. So this is why they've got this wide field of vision. But another like drawback about this vision is that they because they have this narrow, very narrow field of vision, and so they have this narrow field of the binocular zone. So it means the binocular zone, the field that is seen by both eyes, is very narrow, and this gives drawbacks about the depth of perception. So we have a lot of ways, maybe three ways on how the depth of perception is achieved, and one way is by using binocular vision. The vision by both eyes will help to calculate the three-dimension orientation of object in a space, and make sure you've watched the depth of perception video. So this way gives it gives drawback on the depth of perception, but otherwise it gives a very wide field of vision. And human being now, the eyes are pressed on the ventral side. The eyes are pressed on the anterior side of the head. So this also gives a clue about how we see the world, because you see the left eye, for example, can see from this point all the way to this point, all the way to this point. So we have this we call the visual axis. So this is the visual axis. So we can see on the lateral, on the lateral view, or on the lateral vision, we can see 100 degrees, as far as 100 degrees on the lateral side, and 100 degrees from the visual axis, from the point that I'm looking directly at. So I can, when I'm looking forward, I can see as far as 100 degrees lateral side, and by this eye as far as 60 degrees medially. And then same applies on the right eye. When I'm looking forward, I can see as far as 100 degrees laterally, and as far as 60 degree medially. And notice these words now I'm using when I am looking and I'm seeing. So I'm looking forward, but I see forward direction, but I can also see on the lateral side. So that's the difference. Remember the difference between see and look. And so this is the extent of the left eye. Same applies to the right eye. So it has got all the same degrees of vision. So from the visual axis, 100 degrees laterally, and 60 degrees medially. Same applies for the either eyes. So when you combine these two visions, or the vision from two eyes, you get to see, I can see as far as 200 degrees on the lateral side. So from all this region, I can see almost 200 degrees. And remember, I told you the dark were almost 360 degrees. It was around 350, or give or take, plus or minus. but human beings will have like these 200 degrees of vision on the lateral side. But vision now is three-dimension thing, so we can see on lateral side. But what are the extent of vision on vertical fashion, on a vertical fashion? How far can I see above my visual axis, and how low can I see below my visual axis? And here is what we know. So above the visual axis, a human being can see as far as 60 degrees above the visual axis, and then as low as 75 degrees below the visual axis. So this is to say that this is point of fixation, like this is where I'm looking, and this is my visual axis. I can see as far as this point, which is 60 degrees, and as low as 75 degrees or below the visual axis. So now let's define what the visual field is. We have spent like 15 minutes trying to make sense on what we can relate. So the visual field is just a scope of an eye. It's an extent of an eye. It's how far your eye can see. It's an extent of the eye. It's a scope of eye is how far your eye can see. It's in that region in the space, in that region in the environment that your eye can see. So a visual field of one eye is that region, the space in the globe that your eye can see when your other eye is closed. So the visual field of left eye is what I'm seeing with the left eye, while the right eye is closed. So it's basically the scope of your eye, how far your eye can see. And we have seen like in a horizontal fashion, the eye can see 100 degrees laterally and 60 degrees medially, so a total of 160 degrees. And then on a horizontal, in a vertical fashion, you can say 60 degrees plus 75, so roughly 135, we may give or take, and that's what we call the scope of an eye. So this is what I was emphasizing, and same applies to this one. So 100 degrees laterally or 60 degrees medially, and 60 degrees above, 60 degrees below the visual axis. Make sure you've watched the previous video on the retina that explains all these the visual axis and stuff. So this is what I'm seeing with my left eye. So we have this field, like the right eye is crossed, for example, and this is what I'm seeing. So it goes all the way this direction, and notice here we have like a slot or something. Yes, a slot or something that I like to think that as this part of the nose that is trying to like limit the vision on the on the other side of the space. So if you close your right eye, for example, you will see that when you're looking forward, this part is like kind of obstructing the vision, because the eye is a little bit behind the nose, and in that way. And then another important thing to notice is that the visual field is the measure of the peripheral retina. The visual field is the measure of peripheral retina. What is the measure of the central retina? We saw in the previous video is the visual acuity. The visual acuity is the measure of the central retina. The visual field is the measure of the peripheral retina. What does it mean? I mean, we can have pathologies in the retina, and we as clinicians, how do we know that this pathology it is at the center of the retina or at the periphery of the retina? How do we know? So we run these two tests, the visual acuity. Remember, don't forget to go and watch the visual, how do we check for visual acuity and all the facts about the visual acuity. But so we learn these two tests. We learn the visual pathway, the visual acuity, and we do also the visual field. So the visual acuity will help to tell us anything that happens in the center of the retina at the fovea centralis. So it gives the status of the center of the retina, the central retina. So if you get a pathology in the center of the retina, the visual field will be affected. But on the other hand, now if I run a test and I find the visual acuity is like 6 is perfect, 6/6, when I know that I don't have any pathology at the center of the retina. So the central retina is like intact, it's okay. And then now I'm going to run the visual field examination. So I'm going to examine the visual field. So if at all I find something on the visual field, like there is some point of abnormality, then I know, okay, I have problem on the peripheral retina, So not exclusive on the peripheral retina, but the pathology may potentially start from the peripheral retina all the way to the cerebral cortex. It depends, and we will see why we're discussing the visual pathway. But this is basically what it means to say it's a measure of the peripheral retina. It's the measure of peripheral retina. So if you find the visual acuity is intact, well, don't worry about visual acuity. Go and check the visual field, because we might have pathology on the visual field which is not necessarily affecting the visual acuity. Are we together? And yeah. So, and make sure each eye is tested independently. Why do we have to test each eye independently? Because we have said we have the central part of the visual field is fusible for both eyes. We have the binocular zone, and because we have the binocular zone, it means if I have pathology on the left eye, that rise potentially in the binocular zone. For example, I have pathology in the right eye, that lie maybe in the right eye, that rise in the this binocular zone. It can potentially be compensated. It can be compensated. Yeah. So I mean, this is very good example here. If I have pathology here at this region on the right eye, means it can be compensated by the left eye. Why? Because the left eye can also see this region. So this region over here, this is binocular zone, can be seen by both eyes. So if I'm testing both eyes together, and means I can potentially miss the pathology that was there if I would close one eye and test each eye independently. So that's why it is important to test each eye independently. So as I've said, like we have this central part, the binocular zone, which is seen by both eyes, and then we have this is monocular zone. You see this monocular zone, how it goes. So all this region, it is a concentric in shape, like a shape of a banana. Yes, so it's a concentric in shape, and then it has also the same shape, and then this central part is the field of fusion, which is binocular zone, can be seen by both eyes. And as I've said, this central part is seen by both eyes, so you have to test each eye independently so that you don't miss the pathology. And another important thing is at the center of the binocular zone is where we have because at the center of the visual acuity increases as you go through to the center of the binocular, the center of the visual field. Because why, you will tell me in the comment about the arrangement of floats and cones, and what we mean by these two stuff. So the visual field can be divided into upper and lower space, because the visual field is this region of the space that we see, the region of the space. So for each eye, it can be divided into upper and lower, and also left and right. Upper and lower, left and right. So each eye that you have has got almost these four quadrants. We call them quadrants. Four quadrants. So we have the left upper, the right upper, the lower, the left lower, and the right lower. So it's divided in that manner. And then now we want to use other terminologies. We don't want to use left and right. Of course, there's so much confusion sometimes. Left from this eye, right from this eye, and then left and right, and so much confusion. So we want to import the terminologies that were used, that were meant for use for visual eye. So the left and right can be replaced by a nasal and temporal. So the visual field can be divided into upper visual space, and lower visual space, or upper visual field, lower visual field, but a nasal visual field and a temporal visual field. So the nasal visual field is this field of the environment, field in the space that is towards the nose or towards the medial side, towards the medial side. For example, in the right eye, I'm crossing the right eye, I'm using my left eye. So the field that is toward the nose, toward the right side will be the nasal visual field, and then the field which is away from nose, towards the temporal bone, the temporal side will be the temporal visual field. So it will be the temporal visual field. So this is what we basically use every day, and so that's the you know visual space, how the visual space are put in quadrants. So we can have the upper nasal, so the upper temporal, lower temporal, upper nasal, and lower nasal. So we like emphasize as we're moving forward, but now let's go back to this picture. Remember when we say the image for the retina, is left, right, reverse, and upside down or inverted. So why did we say so? Because we say this this lower part of the retina takes information from the upper part of the visual space, or the upper part of the objects, upper part of the visual space, and then this upper part of the retina takes information from the lower part of the visual space, or the lower part of the object. Same applies, we say that the right part of the retina takes information from the left part of the visual space, the left part of the object. So the visual space is now we call the visual field now. And then the left part of the retina takes information from the right part of the visual space, or the right part of the object, or the right part of the visual field. Do you remember this terminology? We saw this in the previous, in the video that explains about the retina. And then now I want to replace this left-right stuff with nasal and temporal terminologies. But I want you to notice, like, the region is also divided into 2 points, and the point that is medial, the point that is toward the nose, it's medial, we call it the nasal retina, and the point that is away from the nose is toward the temporal bone, we call it temporal retina. So you have seen the transition. We have moved from left to right into now we are putting now this terminology, nasal and temporal. Yeah, so this is the eye. We're assuming this is the left eye, and then the left eye, if it's left eye, means this part here is towards the temporal bone, towards the temporal bone, lateral side, and then this part here is toward the nose, towards the medial side, and we call the nasal retina. So the retina can be divided into 2 halves: the nasal half and the temporal half, and then the visual space is also divided into 2 halves, as we've seen, like in terms of this vertical stuffs. So it has the temporal side, the temporal field, which is towards the temporal side, the lateral side, and then it has got the medial side, which is nasal side, But same applies, the same knowledge you use, that the information, the nasal part of the retina, it observes the lefty, the temporal side of the visual space. Yes, it observes the temporal side of the visual space. So this is to say that the information from the temporal retina, from the temporal visual space, will go to the nasal retina, and the information from the nasal retina will go to the temporal. So information from the nasal space, the nasal visual field, or the nasal space, will go to the temporal retina, and this is what brought about this was what brought about all the differences, like inversion and this is also kind of making like the image from the retina flipped. Yeah, I think that was it about today's discussion, and this is your take home. So visual field is a measure of the peripheral retina, guys. You cannot forget about this point. I've talked about it maybe 100 times, and don't forget to watch the previous part, so as to connect the visual the visual acute and the visual field. What are the differences between the two? And the visual field examination does not replace the visual acute. So you basically have to do both of them. So you have to check the visual acute, and then you check for the visual field, and check it for visual field. So that is it from today's discussion, and you see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned, because I will drop the video pathway as soon as get done.